we use much more area around it. That way, our conservation impact is wider. We cover more than 10% of the world's bird species recorded in our species. We also have a reserve within the Galapagos Islands, within the Marine Reserve, connecting with the Coco Island in Costa Rica. We have reforestation monitoring and other sorts of projects. As some of the examples of our work, we have the hummingbird here, the blue-throated star frontlet. It was discovered in 2018, and we have been working with him. We have saved endangered species, which is the pale-headed brushfinch. We have that bird at the Yunguilla Reserve, and we have important records of frogs that were about to be extinct, but they have been rediscovered. And an example of this is the horned marsupial frog in Arcanand Reserve. Now going more into the migratory bird monitoring program and its interdisciplinary approach, I wanted to tell you that we have a conservation strategy in which we establish these conservation actions, leading the way to follow within our planned activities, and migratory birds are considered within our strategy as a flagship species, and this is an operational unit in which we include several species. We do not have a species with direct actions, but they are charismatic species with which we work in the reserve and landscape regarding monitoring, and they are fundamental to actually be able to train the people or forest keepers and the community to raise environmental awareness, and this allows us for there to be regeneration activities, also prevention and protection of forest activities. As an introduction, here in Ecuador, we have bird visits, boreal and southern austral birds visits here. The boreal ones come from September to April, and it depends on the weather. They come from cold weather, and they look for food in the more tropical regions. We have also birds coming from the south, from the austral region. That's 21 species, and we have birds that migrate regionally. This is an intertropical migration. This happens throughout the year during the months that I just told you about. We have 12 reserves where migratory bird monitoring is being carried out, where we install transects, which are lineal areas where we can apply the recording methodology. You have the list of all of the reserves where we have installed transects for monitoring of migratory birds and also fixed points. So with a transect, you go around to over a specific distance during a specific time. This is 2 kilometers per transect, and we are covering about 10 hectares per transect, while in the fixed points, we establish these points in a specific place, and during a specific times, you see the birds that go by. This is more for coastal or marine birds. Here we have some examples of marine birds that we have recorded during our time. Here you can see how the transect for bird monitoring works. We have the width and height measures that we have. Each transect is framed within a specific space to be more specific regarding the recording of a specific birds, and the people in charge of the monitoring are people from the community or forest keepers, and they apply this methodology in a standardized way so that later on they can compare this with the other records. Here we have some pictures where you can see the different sort of tagging that the forest keepers carry out. Some here, some others are placed placed on the ground, some others are taped around trees, and here we have pictures of some forest rangers monitoring the reserve. With this information they collect on the field, we can carry out analysis at a reserve and regional scale because of the amount of areas that we have all along Ecuador. So as an example, I'm going to show you a little bit of the analysis of the results that we had up until 2023. Now we are carrying out analysis at a regional level, which allows us to have an idea of the magnitude of records regarding richness and abundance that we have in our reserves. In the lower part, in the x-axis, you can see all of the reserves, and in the y-axis, you can see the amount of the species and the recorded individuals of migratory birds that we have here. It is important to see our Narupa reserve located in the upper Amazon region with a high amount of individuals, and also the Sumaco area. Also, as an example, with this information, we can get the migratory bird dominance per reserve per transect by calculations regarding the density of individuals, transects, lists of species, and we also compare the different transects. That way we can know what transect has the greatest dominance, diversity, and richness of a species. In the lower right corner, you can see transect 7, Narupa Rise, had the highest amount of migratory species recordings and individuals. Over here, we can see species and what transects we have found them, which ones have been just from that transect, and then we analyze which ones can be the causes for these species to be there and not in other transects. So here we can also work on the seasonal timings, and you can see how this goes from September to April next year, and the fluctuation of migratory birds within our recordings. This has allowed us to carry out a comparison in between the different reserves and years so that we can know when there have been more or less, and we can find certain explanations in this matter. So here we can see what transects that have been monitored have dominant species. Like, for example, here we see that the non-dominant species in all of the monitorings was the Swainson thrush that was found in transect number 3 within our monitoring area in Palanda. And then we can see which are more or less found. We can also carry out comparisons in between different migratory seasons with the other results in the other reserves where we have been carrying out monitoring. Also here we can see the amount of species, migratory birds we have found over the different years, what species have been the dominant species, which ones have been the new ones, or the ones that haven't appeared anymore. And we mean that it doesn't mean that the species is not in the place, but that it wasn't recorded if they do not appear here. And we have proven this through other monitoring studies by other colleagues in different areas. Here we have collected a database with pictures of migratory species. The pictures have been taken in the field, and we have the garganitas, all of the warblers here. Here we have the blackbird warbler, Oregonian warbler, the summer tanager, and the first thrush. We have other species that are more related to water, such as the duck that you can see there, the peavy species, like the western wood peavy, the cerulean warbler as well, which is our flagship species for migratory bird projects that we are working on. We have also carried out regional scale analysis. Here is the Ecuadorian map, and the orange points are the different recordings within our reserves and the areas where we are working on at a landscape level. As you can see, we are covering the south a little bit more, but we have reserves in the coast, the highlands, and also the Amazon region. Within this more regional scale, we have been able to carry out richness and abundance analysis. We have a comparison here in between different years where we have had more species, what seasons or what years have had the most individuals in what sort of weather or climate. In 2021, 2022, we've had more species, and over here we have the number of individuals during these migratory seasons. We are also carrying analysis at a bioregional level. We have 5 bioregions that have been classified. In the first chart, we have the high Amazon that comes first with 94 species. And regarding abundance, we also have the high Amazon in place number 1. This gives a high level of importance to this bioregion to try and establish conservation and restoration projects here, because this is highly important for migratory birds. At the end, we find the Choco region, which are less recordings of individuals and species, but this doesn't make it less important. This makes us think probably that there is less presence of migratory birds, and this is something very important to protect as well. We can also carry out comparisons in between regions, such as the Amazon and the coastal area. And here in this chart, you see this along the years and different migratory seasons. We can also see that the Amazon is the area with the highest visit of migratory birds and the highest presence of species. We have also worked on graphs and comparisons of the different migratory seasons with the different reserves where we carry out monitoring. Here you can clearly see that the Sumaco area and the Narupa Reserve are highly important areas for the recording of land migratory species, and in Ayampe, this area is important due to the recording of marine birds, or those birds related to water. Here we see the same regarding species abundance, and over here we have the reserves that are placed in the Amazon. This is a graph of the species dominance during the monitorings carried out in 2023, 22, 23, 24, where the methodology we have been applying was standardized. And we do have results of years before this. However, the methodology wasn't well set, but in these last 3 seasons, all of the methods have been standardized, and this has allowed us to carry out more comparisons and have more knowledge of the migratory birds. These data have been used to determine the richness, abundance, and density, distribution, temporality, the habitat preference, and to carry out comparisons between different seasonal monitorings. We have also found limitations such as scale, because we know Ecuador is a small country located in South America. Our actions can contribute to actually protecting these species, as they need habitat conservation at a greater scale. However, we are doing this and we're trying to collect information that will allow us to understand this better. Also, coming and getting partnerships with other organizations. Another limitation we have is the data quality. Because it depends of the observers skills, interest, and experience. Those people who are involved in bird monitoring and the strict method application allows data to be more comparable. We have the fact that detectability influences in this because it's not the same carrying out a monitoring of low strata forest and also forests that are way bigger with 3 or 4 strata. This is something that has to be taken into account for the data quality as well. Bearing in mind the limitations that we have right now, we have a training component for park rangers and communities. Here we have generated printed material such as field guides. This is work that we carried out together with the authors of the Warburg Guide and their field guidelines that gave us their pictures so that we can generate field guidelines here in Ecuador. This will be easier to work with and to promote environmental education to the park rangers and communities. This has had a high impact. People are still calling us to provide them with these guidelines, and this is also a very important tool to better the records and the field observation. We have worked on different workshops and we continue providing workshops to train people. Here we can see forest rangers using the field guidelines that we provided with, and we also work on trainings with the community people we work with, and we also have a monitoring program in areas outside the reserve where we have people from the community involved. Here you see people with the certificates after having participated in the training. We also work with bird experts within ornithology. We have Manuel Sanchez, who is very famous. He has taught some courses and field trainings. We also have here Rudy Hellis, who has provided us with valuable knowledge for bird identification. Lucian Wurwhistle, who has also been a part of this training program. And this has allowed us to call on the attention of more people so that more people get involved within this monitoring. Currently, we have a partnership with Aves y Conservación. We work with BirdLife, and we are working on trainings and monitorings at a greater scale, mainly in the Chocó, where we have promoted talks and workshops to the community and park rangers. This is in the Canada Reserve during a workshop that we carried out on migratory birds, specifically with the people who are in charge of high-scale monitoring in the Ecuadorian Chocó. As a conclusion, we can see that our work has allowed us to identify areas for protection, also working with people of the communities to be able to raise awareness in the people so that we can have a greater impact, because the people of the communities are the ones depending on the forest as a resource to coexist, and we need to find alternatives for taking care of the environment, for continuing using the forest resources. There is a project where we can see that an actual impact requires the interdisciplinary approach of politicians, researchers, foundations, forest keepers, forest rangers, and the community in general. What are our next steps? We're continuing with the monitoring we have carried out all over these years so that we can get to know the status of the populations and have comparisons within our objectives for this monitoring. We have the implementation of new innovative technologies. Currently, we are working on an AI algorithm for automated recognition of a species using vocalizations obtained in the field with recording campaigns where we place the recorders for a month out of the field and collect all of the sounds there. This is working very well, and we can actually use this technology to identify the migratory species we have. We are still going into our first steps here, but all along the monitorings in the next migratory seasons, we might be able to already apply this technology. As I was telling you, the idea is also to continue training our people so that they can build up their skills at a visual and hearing level, which is what we have been doing with workshops, and we will continue doing that. We're also interested in covering more area, getting wider areas, and establishing more transects in high priority areas for migratory birds here in Ecuador. And also, we want to continue working on alliances with people and organizations that are working on our same field so that we can support each other to have a greater impact. Finally, our interest is to generate and enrich more habitats that have been degraded so that we can establish corridors that can be used for birds during their migration. We want to thank the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and their MBCA program, which has been our main ally to establish these projects. And all of the people at Jocotoco, forest rangers, administrative staff, and people that has been involved in the monitorings, because without them, we wouldn't be able to do all of our work. And with this, I would like to finish my talk. Thank you very much. I am now open to any questions that might arise. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patricio. That was an excellent talk, and it was really exciting to see the work and the number of bird species that you're able to observe in these different reserves across Ecuador. We are opening the floor to questions, so people can raise their hand to ask a question live, and they can also post in the chat. The simultaneous translation works, so please feel free to post or ask your question in English or Spanish, whichever you're more comfortable with. Just gonna go to the chat. All right, so we have a few questions in the chat, which is great. The first is, thank you for your presentation. I used to work at the Missouri Department of Conservation, helping to support the important work of Jocotoco in Ecuador to benefit cerulean warblers and other endemic species. They have two questions. First, how do you recruit your local bird counters? By schools, local communities, or people already working on the reserve? And then second, what do you feel is the biggest threat to bird populations in Ecuador?
Okay. Principalmente nuestra forma de captar
mainly our way of bringing people in here is having people that have a project that are working in natural resources in the areas. And we have also tried to identify different groups of observation of birds. So I would like to we would like to make an interest for them to actually get there with community people that are interested. There, people in the community know the people, know how they think, the idiosyncrasy and the realities of the different communities and people. So they are our links, and this is the way in which we try to engage people. And there are also people who approach us and they say they are interested in working with the foundation and that want to change the resource management style in the environment they live in. This way, we analyze this, we see if they are somehow within our action field, meaning if they are close to our reserves, if they are part of the landscapes that we are working on, and we try to get as many people involved as we can. And regarding the threats, I believe habitat fragmentation, mainly due to human existence. And we're talking about livestock, about deforestation, irrational use of natural resources. Those are the greatest threats that the habitat has, and also extraction projects such as mining here in the country. This is hitting the different regions hard, and also the resources out of which human beings live off. So I believe there needs to be a better management of these aspects to work on the care and protection of forests, because this provides food and different resources to birds.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question asking if you can tell us more about the acoustic monitoring.
Of course. Currently, as I was telling you before, we have a landscape project. We're not only working on it only within our reserves, but outside of them. With this, we try for there to be a greater resilience of the habitats that we are protecting. And for this, we would like to know what species are there. For this, we have identified that a very good tool right now is being used. And this is the identification of a species through vocalization, not only for birds, but also mammals and amphibians. So we have some programs that have been established based on specific samplings, such as trap cameras and automatic recorders, so that this allows us to collect registries of the different species. In this specific case for acoustic monitoring, we collect this information, put it together within a database, and we have people specifically working on filtering these audios, and that's hours and hours of it, many gigabytes of information to filter this data, and they work directly with expert researchers in bird identification, as some of the people that I just talked about, and together with them, we work on the tagging of these recordings, and we use Raven or Audacity that are there to select within the spectrogram of these recordings the species that we want to study. And this is also used to train an AI algorithm looking for these combinations, and so that we can see the similarities in the identification of a species. This is into the future, but this is currently being worked on at the foundation, and we will be working on a database, which is BirdNet. Many people use this for identification, and this will be an open space so that people can use in different places. This is something that we are doing, but this has a focus in migratory birds, so that we can identify them by using this technology. This is also a challenge because migratory birds here in Ecuador do not sing as much as the resident local birds. They do not have that need. They mainly make contact sounds within different species so that they can group or run away in case of danger, but it's not like a song or a vocalization as such. There are some cases, yes, but that's not as common. So there are some species, there is a song or from a species, let's say, that we can find, and it's difficult to identify. But we're trying to work on a different analysis as well so that we can use it. I believe this is possible, and I believe we will be able to do this. And with this, probably within the transects, we will be able to work on this and collect more information with a lower cost and get more information, of course.
Thank you for that explanation. Yeah, it makes sense that the contact calls would pose a challenge when they're in their non-breeding season. We have another question asking if the program will be able to continue if there is a reduction in funding from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, given the uncertain funding situation in the government currently.
Sí, eso es algo que nos ha preocupado últimamente.
This is actually something that we are concerned about because we look for the foundation not to depend on one single body, even though this body has been the main funding organization, but we are looking for other alternatives. This is concerning, yes, but we are looking for different options, different alternatives, and so we are carrying out a cost analysis for monitoring, and I believe we will indeed be able to manage this somehow, but if there is a reduction in the budget, we will be taking a hard hit as a great amount of funds go towards community training and so on, and this will pose a limitation for our impact. We hope this doesn't happen, of course, but we will see.
Great, thank you. We've got another question in the chat here. What are the different sources of income for the different reserves?
Ya.
Okay.
Si bien entendí bien la pregunta.
Let me see if I understood the question. You're talking about the information that we're getting, right?
I'm not sure if David wants to elaborate on their question and what their intention is. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hola, hola Patricio.
Yes.
Muy
Hi,
bonita
Patricio. This was a great presentation, definitely. The question is actually related to the former question. What are the incomes of all of these reserves? I believe there are 13, or I don't recall how many they are. 13 reserves that you have. So how do you keep these reserves? How do you sustain these operations? How do you pay for that? You said a part of this is with the funds of Fish and Wildlife and other sources, but what are the main incomes that you have, and what can you actually do with those sources of income?
Gracias, David.
Okay, thank you, David. In the foundation, we have different sources of information, mainly from donors abroad, and we also try to manage our income through self-management. We have Jocotoco, a sister company that allows the people to access the reserves and the tourist areas. So this allows us to be self-sufficient, but we work on migratory birds and many other projects like a specific species, mainly for birds, but more and more organizations, more groups have approached us because now we are working with
una lagartija con varios tipos de plantas
Malagartija
encontradas
with
en nuestras reservas.
lizard,
Entonces, esto
different
nos ha
plants
permitido
that we
tener
have in the
varios
reserves.
tipos de
So
fuentes de
this allows
ingresos
us to have different income
y eso,
sources.
con eso hemos podido
And
y estamos
this
trabajando.
has
Entonces, la
allowed us to do
fundación
this. That's how we are
lo
working
manejamos así
on that.
actualmente y eso nos ha
That's how
permitido
we are
tener
managing
el
it
impacto
right now,
que
and this has
tenemos y
allowed
que
us to
deseamos.
have the
Pero
impact that
ante estos
we
recortes
have
sí, de
had
alguna manera nos
and to
podrían
move
afectar
forward.
y les dije,
This
estamos tratando
can have
ver
an
cómo podemos
impact
tener
on
esos
us. I
vacíos.
mean, if there is a fund reduction, and we're trying to fill those gaps as well.
Thank you. Are there any other additional questions from the audience? Edwin, please go ahead.
Hola Patricio, muy buena
Hi,
presentación, gracias por tu
Patricio. Great
tiempo.
presentation. Thank you very much for your time.
Continuando con el tema de
Moving on
ingresos y financiamiento,
with
también quería
income and
mencionar
funding, I
como
wanted to
hizo
tell
alusión Sarah
you,
Kendrick,
as Sarah Kendrick just said,
muchos estados en la federación
we're
aquí
talking about the many
apoyan
states
la
of the
conservación de
federation
aves
here that
migratorias por
support
medio del programa
migratory
Wings.
birds through the
Y
Satyr
creo
Wings
que,
program.
si no me equivoco, este proyecto también en el pasado ha recibido
In the
ciertas
past,
aportaciones.
this has provided
Así
us
se lo quería
certain contributions, so
mencionar
I
para la
wanted
audiencia en
to
general y
talk
también
about
para
this
comentar que
for the
también
people in general, and I
ese
wanted
pudiera
to
ser otra
say
fuente
that
de
maybe
apoyo
this can be
y también
another
otra oportunidad que
supporting
otros
source and
estados
another
pudieran
opportunity that for other
apoyar este proyecto o
states to
proyectos
support
similares
this
a lo
project
largo
or
del
similar
continente americano.
projects
Así es
along
que
the
en
American
el chat voy a
continent. So
compartir
I
la
will
liga
share
de ese programa donde hay
the
información
link of this
cuáles son las
program where you will
especies
be able to
prioritarias
find
para cada estado
information of the
y
priority
donde se
species
pueden
for
hacer,
each
digamos, esas
state,
conexiones de
for each country,
buscando
and where
conservar
you
las
can
especies
make
migratorias
conservation
y las
connections
residentes por medio
for
por medio de este
migratory
tipo de
birds
apoyo.
and local
Gracias.
birds through this support. Thank you.
Gracias, Edwin. Sí, había
Thank
escuchado
you,
sobre,
Edwin. I had
sobre ese proyecto, pero no tenemos
heard about
actualmente
this
vínculo
project
con ellos.
before, but
Sin
currently we
embargo,
do
va a ser
not
muy
have
valioso
a
que nos compartas esto para
relationship
poder ver
with
si
that, but
podemos hacer
please
algún
share this with
contacto
us
con
to
ellos
see if we can
y también
approach
considerar a
them
ellos
and
como un posible
also
aliado.
probably have them as a possible ally.
Great, thanks for sharing that resource, Edwin. Are there any other questions from the audience? Looks like that concludes then the question period. Thank you so much again, Patricio, for an amazing talk and for sharing your work that you're doing. And hopefully, yeah, we can make some more connections across the flyway.
Muchas gracias a todos. Gracias, Queen, y las demás personas por haberme
Thank
invitado.
you,
Para mí es
Queen.
un
Thank you
placer
all for having me here.
hablar
For
sobre,
me,
sobre lo
it
que
is a
estamos
great
haciendo.
pleasure.
Bueno, espero
This
que
talking
todos
about what we are
consideremos el
doing,
mensaje de la
So
protección,
hopefully
sobre
everyone
todo la gente
takes
que ha estado
this
aquí
message about protection
piense
with
en la
them,
conservación como
because
algo
I know
importante que
people
tenemos que
here
tener.
think about
Así que
conservation, about the
para
most
otra
important
ocasión, si
thing
es
that we
necesario hablar
need
sobre
to
algún otro
have.
proyecto que
If
tenemos,
you
gustoso
want
de
for us
participar.
to talk about any other projects we have, we are open to doing so. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you all for attending this webinar. We hope to see you at our future Road to Recovery events and at the future webinars. So thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.